My parents always made it clear that I was the backup kid, the one they didn't really expect much from. My sister, though, Sarah, was the golden child, the flawless daughter, the perfect wife, the doting mother of 2 adorable kids. Every family gathering, every dinner, every holiday, she was the star. Me, just Daniel, the reliable one. The one who didn't cause trouble, didn't ask for much, and always managed to have some extra cash when anyone needed it. It started small. "Danny, could you help with the electricity bill this month?" my mum asked one evening. "Your dad and I are a little tight. I had just landed my first real job, and I didn't think twice." Of course I helped. Then came the next request. "Liam needs braces, and it's just so expensive." Sarah sighed over the phone. "You're doing well, right? I wouldn't ask, but..." And just like that, helping out became a pattern. Bills, school supplies, unexpected repairs. You name it, I covered it. "You're so lucky, Danny," my mum would say with a smile. "You don't have all these responsibilities like Sarah does." Lucky. That's what they called it. I convinced myself it was okay. After all, I wasn't really struggling. No wife, no kids, no massive expenses, just me and my dreams. But I did have one dream: travelling. I'd been saving for years, fantasizing about visiting Italy, wandering through ancient streets, sipping espresso at tiny cafes, and finally doing something just for me. Yet every time I got close to booking that ticket, something came up. Another family emergency, another guilt trip, another sacrifice. So when I finally managed to save enough and actually book that flight, I didn't tell anyone. For once, it was my moment, my escape, my freedom. The airport was buzzing with people, and I was in line for the economy boarding when I heard a familiar voice. "No, Liam, put your backpack down. The seats are huge. You don't need all that stuff." My heart dropped. I turned and saw them, Sarah, her kids, my parents, all standing in the priority line, relaxed, happy, first class. For a second I thought I was imagining things. My parents who couldn't afford a trip for me. My sister who constantly claimed money was tight. Maybe they'd saved up. Maybe it was some miracle deal. Then I heard my mom laugh. "I still feel bad we couldn't take Danny," she said, shaking her head. Sarah snorted. "Please." He wouldn't have fit in. They all laughed. I felt like I'd been punched. I didn't say a word. I just watched them walk away boarding first class while I stayed rooted to the spot. I didn't call them, didn't text. For the first time, I let the silence hang. Usually, I was the one checking in, making sure everything was okay, but not this time. My trip to Italy was beautiful. Everything I dreamed of: stunning views, incredible food, and most of all, a sense of peace I hadn't felt in years. Yet at night, as I sat on my hotel balcony overlooking the city lights, their words echoed in my mind. He wouldn't have fit in. That wasn't just about the trip. It was about me, my entire place in their world. When I got back home, the calls started immediately. First it was my mum. "Hey, sweetheart, how was your trip?" Her tone was too cheerful, like she was forcing it. "It was great," I replied, keeping my voice flat. "Good, good. Listen, your dad and I were wondering if you could help us out this month, just a little extra for groceries." I let the silence stretch. Then I laughed, sharp, bitter. "Groceries," I echoed, "like the ones you bought on your way back from first class." Silence, then a nervous chuckle. "Danny, that was different. We had some airline miles saved up and Sarah found a great deal." Don't I cut her off, just don't. She tried to explain, but I wasn't listening anymore. For once I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. 2 days later, Sarah called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "What do you want, Sarah?" I said, instead of a greeting. "Oh, so now you're too good to answer your own family," she snapped. "First class must have really spoiled you," I shot back. Her voice softened, the one she used when she wanted something. "Danny, come on. You know how hard things are for us. You don't have kids. You don't have real expenses. It's different for you." I clenched my jaw. Right, I said. And yet I paid for Liam's soccer fees last month. Well, yeah, she said like it was the most obvious thing in the world. You always do. Not anymore, I said simply. She laughed like I was joking. Oh my God, you're actually serious. Wow, Danny, you're such a selfish little... I hung up. For the first time in my life, I didn't care about the fallout. I just wanted peace. The calls kept coming first from my mom, then my dad, accusing me of being dramatic, abandoning the family. I let every one of them go to voicemail. I knew they'd eventually push harder, but I wasn't backing down this time. That night I made myself a cup of coffee, sat on my couch and just let the silence wrap around me. No guilt, no burden, just me. For once, that felt like enough. The first week after I cut them off felt strange, liberating but strange. My phone was unusually quiet. I had grown so used to the constant pings, requests for money, last-minute favours, guilt-laden check-ins, that the silence felt almost eerie. At first I thought maybe they had gotten the message that they'd finally accepted my boundaries. But then the texts started trickling in. Mom, Danny, we need to talk. You can't just ignore your family like this. Dad, son, this is getting out of hand. Just call us back. Sarah, oh, so this is how you're going to play it. Grow up, Danny. I ignored every single one. I knew it would only encourage them if I caved now. Then came the voicemail. My mother's voice shaky, forced, like she was playing the role of a worried, heartbroken mother. Danny, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't right. We're family. Families help each other. Call me back. That line, families help each other. I almost laughed. I'd been the one helping them for years, covering bills, paying for my niece and nephew's school supplies, bailing them out of one financial mess after another. And now, because I finally chose myself, I was the villain. A few days later, my dad tried a different tactic. He showed up at my apartment. I heard the heavy knock, the one he used when he was trying to assert his authority. I considered pretending I wasn't home, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door. He stood there, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. We need to talk. I leaned against the doorframe, crossing my own arms. About what? About this phase you're going through. I blinked. Phase. Like I was some rebellious teenager. This isn't a phase, Dad. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Look, your mother is upset. She's been crying over this. She just wants things to go back to normal. Normal, I echoed, feeling my chest tighten. Normal means me being your personal ATM. Normal means you only calling me when you need money. That's not normal. That's abuse. His face hardened. That's not fair. We're family. I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Family. Like the family that left me out of their vacation. The family that laughed about how I wouldn't fit in while boarding first class. Silence. He hadn't expected that. I watched his jaw tighten, his mind scrambling for a response. That was different, he said finally, his voice quieter now. You're twisting things. No, I said, straightening up. I'm just finally seeing things clearly. I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. He wasn't used to me standing up for myself. I had always been the compliant one, the easy one, the one who never made waves. Danny, he said, his voice shifting, softening like he was trying to find the right words. We need you. Your sister. She's struggling. The kids. They don't understand why you're doing this. I let the silence stretch between us. Then I smiled. They'll figure it out. I could almost see the gears turning in his head, the old manipulative tactics struggling to find a foothold. When he realized I wasn't going to budge, he stepped back, his face darkening. Fine, he said, his voice cold now, but don't come crawling back when you realize you've made a mistake. I smiled a tight, bitter smile. Don't worry, I won't. He turned and walked down the hallway, his footsteps echoing against the cracked tiles. I closed the door, leaning my head against the cool wood, letting the silence settle around me again. It felt good. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of messages. My mom, my dad, my sister, all of them bombarding me with texts, voicemails, even emails. They shifted from concern to anger, then to guilt-tripping, and finally to outright manipulation. "Mum, I can't believe you're doing this to us, after everything we've done for you. Sarah, seriously, this is how you repay us, by abandoning your family dad. You need to come to your senses, son. This isn't you." I put my phone on silent, tossed it onto my couch, and made myself a strong cup of coffee. For the first time in years, my paycheck felt like mine. No more budgeting around their needs, no more covering their unexpected expenses. I started thinking about my next trip. Japan, maybe, or New Zealand. Somewhere far, somewhere beautiful. Then came the real test. A few days later, my mother called again. I let it go to voicemail, but then she texted me. "Mum, Danny, we need to talk. It's about the house." I sighed. I knew this was coming. They had overextended themselves, living beyond their means, counting on me as their safety net. I debated ignoring it, but some nagging part of me still cared. So I called. "What now?" I asked, not even bothering with a greeting. She sighed, her voice cracking. "Danny, we're behind on the mortgage. The bank is sending letters. We might lose the house." I closed my eyes, rubbing my temples. I could almost feel the weight of the guilt they were trying to pile onto me. "You're just telling me this now?" I said, my voice colder than I intended. "We didn't want to worry you," she said quickly, the words rushing out like a desperate confession. "But now, well, we need your help." "Help? That word again." "I can't," I said, my voice steady. "Not this time." "Danny, please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "We need you." I took a deep breath, closing my eyes. "No, you need to figure this out on your own." The silence on the line felt heavy, suffocating, then a shaky breath. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." I felt my jaw tighten. "What exactly have you done for me, Mom, besides use me as your personal safety net?" She said nothing, just a choked breath, and then the line went dead. For the first time, I didn't feel the familiar rush of guilt. I felt free. After I hung up on Sarah, the silence that followed felt heavy. It clung to my apartment, filling every corner, stretching into the following days. For the first time, I had cut off the endless flow of money and emotional support my family had come to expect. At first, I thought maybe they'd back off, realize they had crossed a line. But I had underestimated their ability to ignore reality. It started small. My mum left me a series of voicemails. "Danny, this is getting out of hand. Call me back." "Danny, we're family. You don't just walk away from family." "Danny, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this isn't right. We've always been there for you." I almost laughed when I heard that last one. Always been there for me. I replayed the airport scene in my mind, the matching outfits, the first-class smiles, the casual dismissal. He wouldn't have fit in. A few days later, my dad tried a different tactic. I was sitting on my couch scrolling through photos from my Italy trip, trying to hold on to that sense of freedom when there was a knock on my door. I knew that knock, heavy, deliberate, the kind that said, "We need to talk." I opened the door, and there he stood, arms crossed, jaw tight, the same expression he used to wear when I'd come home late as a teenager. "Can I come in?" he asked, already pushing past me before I could answer. I closed the door behind him, leaning against it, my arms crossed. "What do you want?" He turned to face me, his eyes scanning my apartment like he was inspecting for flaws. "This has gone too far, Daniel. You're being dramatic." I raised an eyebrow. "Am I?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Your mother is upset. She's been crying. She doesn't understand why you're doing this." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. "Why I'm doing this?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended. "You mean why I'm finally standing up for myself?" "Don't be ridiculous," he said, his voice dropping into that familiar tone of controlled frustration. "We're family. Families support each other." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "That's the problem. You expect me to support you, to clean up your messes, to cover your bills, and then you turn around and act like I'm the outsider." His face hardened. "That's not fair. We've always been there for you." I felt a cold anger settle in my chest. Really like at the airport when you laughed about how I wouldn't fit in while boarding first class. Silence. His jaw tightened, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. He hadn't expected me to confront him. That's not what we meant, he said, his tone defensive now. Then what did you mean? I challenged, my voice cutting through the silence of the room. Go ahead, explain it. He opened his mouth, then closed it, struggling to find the right words. For the first time, I watched him fumble, the power dynamic shifting between us. Look, he said, his tone softening, like he was trying to reel me back in. Your sister is under a lot of pressure. The kids, they don't understand why you're doing this. They miss you. I clenched my jaw, my hands balling into fists at my sides. Do they really? I said, my voice low. Or do they just miss my money? He flinched, the truth hitting harder than he expected. I could see the cracks forming in his composure, the carefully constructed image of a loving father starting to crumble. You're being unreasonable, he said, finally his tone growing cold. You're going to regret this. I took a step back, crossing my arms again. Maybe, but at least I'll be free. He stared at me, his eyes narrowing, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of something I had never seen before: fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing the control he had taken for granted for so long. Fine, he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone. But don't come crawling back when you realise you've made a mistake. I let a bitter smile curl at the corners of my mouth. Don't worry, I said, stepping back to the door. I won't. I opened the door, holding it wide, and he hesitated for a moment before stepping out, his back stiff, his shoulders rigid. I closed the door behind him, leaning my head against the cool wood, my heart racing, my hands trembling. I had never stood up to him like that, never drawn a line so clearly. For the first time in years, I felt something other than resentment. I felt powerful. But I knew it wouldn't end here. I had challenged the unspoken hierarchy of our family, and I could already feel the storm building. I poured myself a cup of coffee, sinking into my couch, and stared at the photos from my Italy trip still open on my phone. The quiet streets of Florence, the shimmering canals of Venice, the sunlit ruins of Rome. I had tasted freedom. I wasn't about to let it go. For the first time in years, my apartment felt like my own. The silence that had once been suffocating now felt like a warm blanket, comforting and calm. I filled my days with work, new hobbies, and quiet evenings spent with a glass of wine and a good book. I started planning my next trip, maybe Japan this time, or perhaps New Zealand. The idea of wandering through cherry blossoms or hiking through lush, misty mountains felt like the perfect antidote to the years I'd spent putting my family first. But of course they didn't let me go that easily. It started subtly. My sister Sarah posted a series of cryptic, passive-aggressive updates on social media. Sarah funny, how some people only care about family when it's convenient for them. Sarah blood is supposed to be thicker than water, but some people only care about themselves. It didn't take long for my mom to join in. Mom family means everything. I just wish some people remembered that. I ignored them. It was petty, childish, the kind of emotional manipulation I had fallen for so many times before, but not this time. Then the calls started again, this time with a sharper, more frantic tone. My mum's messages shifted from guilt to panic. Danny, please call me. We're in trouble. Danny, the bank is sending letters. We need to talk. Danny, please, we're going to lose the house. I let the messages pile up, each one tinged with a growing desperation. I knew what they wanted. They wanted me to come rushing back to save them, like I always did, to be the safety net that kept their world from collapsing. I poured myself another cup of coffee and watched the autumn rain trickle down my living room window. I had spent years sacrificing my own dreams to keep them afloat, and this was the thanks I got. Silence at my accomplishments, laughter at my expense and guilt trips when I finally chose myself. A few days later, Sarah showed up at my door. I heard the sharp, frantic knocking, the kind that demanded immediate attention. I sighed, setting my mug down and bracing myself before opening the door. She stormed in, without waiting for an invitation, her face-flushed eyes wild with frustration. She tossed her purse onto my couch, her hands trembling as she turned to face me. "What the hell is wrong with you?" She snapped, her voice high and sharp. I closed the door behind her, crossing my arms as I leaned against it. "Nice to see you too, Sarah." She shot me a look that could have cut glass. "This isn't a joke, Danny. Mom is losing her mind. Dad is barely holding it together. And now I'm stuck dealing with all of this because you've decided to have some sort of midlife crisis." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat. Midlife crisis. That's what she thought this was. "I'm not having a crisis, Sarah," I said, my voice steady. "I'm just done being used." She threw her hands up, pacing in front of my coffee table. "Oh my God, you're being ridiculous. You've always helped us. You've always been the one we can count on. Why are you acting like this?" I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay calm. "Because I'm tired, Sarah. I'm tired of being the one who sacrifices while you all live comfortably. I'm tired of being taken for granted. I'm tired of being the one you only call when you need something." She stopped pacing, her eyes narrowing. "This is about the trip, isn't it?" she said, her voice dripping with accusation. "You're mad because we didn't invite you." I felt my fists tighten, the muscles in my jaw clenching so hard it hurt. She still didn't get it. "No, Sarah," I said, my voice cold and sharp. "This isn't about the trip. This is about the years I've spent being your safety net. It's about the countless times I've covered your bills, paid for your kids' school supplies, saved you from financial disasters, and never once got a thank you." She crossed her arms, her expression shifting from anger to condescension. "Oh, so this is a pity party, poor Danny, the generous brother who just can't catch a break." I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. "No, it's not a pity party. It's me finally drawing a line. It's me choosing myself for once. It's me saying no." Her eyes flared, her cheeks turning a deeper shade of red. "You're being selfish," she hissed. "You have no idea what it's like to have real responsibilities. You don't have kids. You don't have a family to worry about." I felt a bitter laugh slip past my lips. "You mean the kids whose braces I paid for, the ones whose soccer fees I covered, the ones I've practically sponsored for the past decade." She flinched, the words hitting harder than I expected. I saw the flicker of guilt in her eyes, the brief flash of self-awareness before her defences snapped back into place. "You're unbelievable," she spat, grabbing her purse from the couch. "When this all comes crashing down, don't come crawling back." I stepped back, opening the door for her, my heart pounding in my chest. "I won't," I said, my voice steady, my eyes locked on hers. She stormed past me, her heels clicking sharply against the tile as she disappeared down the hallway. I closed the door behind her, leaning my head against the cool wood, my heart racing, my mind buzzing with a strange, unfamiliar mix of anger and relief. For the first time in my life, I hadn't backed down. I hadn't caved to the guilt, hadn't folded under the pressure. I had stood my ground, drawn a line, and refused to let them cross it. I sank onto my couch, running a hand through my hair, my pulse still thundering in my ears. I had no idea what the fallout would be, no idea how my family would respond to this sudden shift in power. But for the first time in years, I felt free. The days after Sarah's dramatic exit from my apartment were eerily quiet. I had expected more pushback, more frantic calls, maybe even a tearful apology. But instead, I got silence. It was the kind of silence that felt heavy, like the air before a storm. I should have known it wouldn't last. A week later, I woke to a flurry of missed calls and text messages. My phone, which had been blissfully silent for days, buzzed aggressively on my nightstand. I reached for it, squinting at the harsh glow of the screen. "Mom, Danny, please call me. It's an emergency. Dad, son, you can't keep ignoring us. This is serious. Sarah, you need to pick up now." I frowned, my pulse quickening. For a brief guilty moment, I wondered if something had actually happened, if there had been a real emergency. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over my mum's number. But then I remembered the years of false alarms, the countless times they had cried wolf, dragging me back into their chaos with overblown, guilt-ridden pleas for help. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm. A few minutes later, another message came through. This one was different. Mom, Danny were going to lose the house. I felt a strange, bitter satisfaction settle in my chest. I knew this day would come. They had been living on the edge for years, propped up by my steady support, my endless generosity. I had been the one patching the cracks in their financial foundation, the one keeping their fragile house of cards from collapsing. And now that I had stepped back, it was all falling apart. I got up, made myself a cup of coffee, and settled onto my couch, my phone still buzzing beside me. I took a slow sip, letting the bitterness roll over my tongue, savouring the quiet satisfaction of knowing I was no longer their safety net. But then curiosity got the better of me. I opened my messages, scrolling through the frantic pleas, the guilt-laden accusations, the thinly veiled threats. Dad, this is your fault. You're the one who left us high and dry. Sarah, I hope you're happy. Mom is crying every night. The kids don't understand why their uncle has abandoned them. Mom, Danny, please, we need you. I leaned back, my eyes narrowing as I read through each message, my jaw tightening, my pulse quickening. This was their plan, to overwhelm me with guilt, to break down my resolve, to drag me back into their mess. And for a brief moment it almost worked. But then I remembered the airport, the laughter, the casual dismissal, the years of being taken for granted. I set my coffee down, my hand trembling slightly, my mind racing. I stood up, pacing the length of my living room, my thoughts spiralling. I had spent my entire life putting them first, sacrificing my own happiness, my own dreams, my own peace of mind to keep them comfortable. And this was the thanks I got: guilt trips. Emotional manipulation, thinly veiled accusations. No, not this time. I grabbed my phone, took a deep breath, and called my mum. She picked up on the first ring, her voice trembling, a mixture of relief and desperation. Danny, oh thank God, I've been so worried. I cut her off, my voice sharp, my patience thin. What do you want, Mom? She hesitated, the sudden coldness in my tone catching her off guard. Danny, please, you have to help us. The bank is sending foreclosure notices. We're going to lose the house. I clenched my jaw, my free hand balling into a fist at my side. How did it get this bad? She hesitated, her voice dropping to a whisper. We overextended. We thought things would get better. We thought you would... Well, you always help us, so we thought... You thought I'd just keep bailing you out. I snapped, my voice rising. You thought I'd keep sacrificing my life, my dreams, my peace, just so you could keep living beyond your means. Danny, it's not like that, she said, her voice breaking. We didn't want to worry you. We thought we could handle it. But you didn't, I said, my voice cold, my anger sharpening into something dangerous. You didn't handle it. You just kept leaning on me, kept bleeding me dry, kept taking without ever once stopping to think about what it was costing me. She started to cry, her sobs echoing through the phone, each one sharper, more desperate than the last. Danny, please, we need you. I closed my eyes, my pulse thundering in my ears, my mind racing. This was the moment, the turning point. The line in the sand I had been too afraid to draw for years. No, I said, my voice steady, my resolve unshakable. You need to figure this out on your own. I'm done. The line went silent, her choked breaths the only sound on the other end. I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of peace settle over me, a quiet calm I hadn't felt in years. Danny, she whispered, her voice broken, shattered. Please, we're your family. I took a deep breath, my jaw tightening, my heart hardening. No, Mom, I said, my voice cold, final. You're my burden, and I'm done carrying you. I hung up, my heart racing, my hands trembling, my mind buzzing with a strange, bittersweet mix of relief and regret. I stared at my phone, half expecting it to start buzzing again, half expecting my dad to show up at my door, half expecting my sister to send another barrage of angry texts. But the silence that followed was absolute. And for the first time in years, I felt free. I didn't hear from them for days. The sudden silence felt strange, unsettling, like the eye of a storm. I found myself checking my phone out of habit, expecting another round of guilt-laden messages or desperate voicemails. But there was nothing. At first I thought maybe they had finally given up, that they had accepted my decision and moved on, but I should have known better. My family never backed down without a fight. Then one morning I got a message from an unexpected source. "Kelly, hey, Danny, I don't know if I should be telling you this, but things are bad at home for them. Really bad." I frowned my fingers, hovering over the screen, my heart pounding. Kelly was one of Sarah's closest friends, someone I had known for years, but never particularly well. She had always been on the sidelines, a supporting character in the chaotic play that was my family's life. What do you mean?" The response came almost instantly. "Kelly, they're in deep. Sarah drained her savings trying to keep your parents afloat, and it's tearing her marriage apart. Mark had no idea how much they relied on you. He's furious." I felt a strange, bitter satisfaction settle in my chest. The same sister who had laughed about how I wouldn't fit in, the same sister who had called me selfish for finally standing up for myself, was now facing the fallout of her own choices. "Kelly, I'm not trying to stir the pot, but I just thought you should know." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to feel guilty, to rush in and fix everything like I always had. But I forced myself to breathe, to stay calm, to remember the years of sacrifices, the countless times I had put my own needs last for the sake of a family that had never truly appreciated me. Thanks for letting me know." I set my phone down my hands, trembling slightly, my mind buzzing with 1,000 conflicting emotions. I should have felt guilty, should have felt a pang of regret, a whisper of responsibility, but instead I felt free. Over the next few days, the pieces of their carefully constructed lives continued to crumble. I saw it in their social media posts, the forced smiles, the strained captions, the sudden absence of their once endless parade of vacation photos and lavish family gatherings. Then a few days later I got another message from Kelly. This one included a screenshot from a private group chat, a chat Sarah clearly hadn't realised would find its way back to me. "Sarah, I can't believe Danny is doing this to us. After everything we've done for him, he just walks away like we're nothing. Sarah Mark is threatening to sell the house. The kids are asking why their uncle doesn't come around anymore. I'm at my breaking point. Sarah. If Danny doesn't come crawling back soon, I don't know what we're going to do." I felt a sharp, bitter laugh slip past my lips. Crawling back. That's what she thought would happen, that I would crumble under the weight of their guilt, that I would come rushing back to save them like a loyal, obedient dog. Not this time. The next morning my phone buzzed with another message, this time from my dad. "Dad, son, this has gone on long enough. You've made your point, but we need to talk." I almost didn't answer, almost let the message sink into the digital void with the rest of their desperate pleas. But something inside me, some twisted sense of curiosity, made me pick up the phone and call him. He answered on the first ring, his voice sharp, controlled the tone of a man who was used to getting his way. "Daniel," he said, his voice tight, strained, "this is getting ridiculous." I leaned back on my couch, crossing my legs, forcing myself to stay calm. "What's ridiculous?" "This silent treatment," he snapped. "Ignoring your family, cutting us off like we're nothing. It's childish." I felt my jaw tighten, the familiar anger bubbling up inside me. "You mean like you cut me off at the airport, like you laughed about how I wouldn't fit in while boarding first class?" Silence. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth on the other end of the line. "That's not the same," he said finally, his voice colder now, more controlled. "We didn't mean it like that." "Then how did you mean it?" I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. "Go ahead, explain it to me." More silence. I could hear him struggling, the carefully constructed facade of a loving, supportive father cracking under the weight of his own hypocrisy. "Look," he said finally, his voice dropping to a strained whisper like he was trying to reel me back in. "Your mother is in a bad place. She's not eating, not sleeping. She just wants things to go back to normal." Normal, that word again, like it was a magic spell that would make me forget years of neglect, years of being the family's financial crutch, years of being taken for granted. I'm not coming back, I said, my voice flat, my resolve unshakable. Not this time. Daniel, he said, his voice sharpening his tone, shifting from pleading to threatening. You're making a mistake. You're going to regret this. I took a deep breath, my pulse quickening, my hands tightening into fists at my sides. No, I said, my voice cold final. The only mistake I made was letting you use me for so long. The line went silent, his sharp breaths, the only sound on the other end. I felt a strange, unfamiliar sense of power wash over me, a quiet, simmering rage that burned away the last traces of guilt and doubt. You're going to regret this, son, he said finally, his voice dripping with quiet fury. I smiled, a bitter, defiant smile, my chest swelling with a newfound sense of freedom. Maybe, I said, my voice calm, steady, but at least I'll be free. I hung up before he could respond, my heart racing, my mind buzzing with 1,000 conflicting emotions. For the first time in years, I had stood my ground. I had drawn a line and refused to let them cross it. And for the first time in my life, I felt free. The weeks that followed felt surreal. I had expected more desperate calls, more guilt-tripping messages, maybe even another surprise visit. But instead, I got silence. My apartment felt different, lighter. I filled my days with work, long walks in the crisp autumn air, and quiet nights spent planning my next adventure. Japan, definitely. Maybe even a few weeks in New Zealand after that. One evening I was scrolling through social media when I stumbled upon a photo that caught my eye. It was a picture of my sister and her husband Mark at a small local restaurant. Their faces were tight, their smiles forced their eyes hollow. The caption read, "Tough times don't last, but tough people do." I raised an eyebrow, clicking through to Sarah's page. The usual flood of happy family photos, beach vacations and first-class flights had dried up. No bragging about the kids, no glossy shots of their perfectly curated life. Just a handful of strained, awkward selfies and vague, melancholic captions. Curious, I scrolled back through her timeline, watching as the tone of her posts shifted from arrogant to desperate. The cracks in her carefully constructed life widening with each passing week. Then a few days later, I got a message from Kelly. "Kelly, I thought you should know. Sarah and Mark sold their house, moved into a smaller place. Things are bad, really bad." I stared at the message, my mind racing. I should have felt something, guilt, maybe, or regret, or even a pang of sympathy for the sister I had once cared about. But instead, I felt nothing. "Me, thanks for letting me know." I set my phone down, leaning back against the cool leather of my couch, my eyes drifting to the framed photo on my wall. It was a shot from my trip to Italy, a quiet cobblestone street bathed in the soft golden glow of an early morning sunrise. The kind of peace I had always longed for, the kind of freedom I had never thought I would find. A few days later, I got another message, this time from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, almost let it slide into the digital void with the rest of their desperate pleas. But something inside me, some small, twisted part of me, made me pick up the phone. "Hello?" There was a long, strained silence on the other end, the faint crackle of static, the distant murmur of a TV in the background. "Danny..." I froze, my heart skipping a beat, my pulse quickening. It was my dad. I hadn't heard his voice in over a month. "What do you want?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. He hesitated, the silence stretching between us, heavy and suffocating. Then he sighed, a deep, weary breath that crackled through the line. "Listen, son," he said, his voice low, strained, like he was forcing the words out. "We need to talk." I felt my jaw tighten, my free hand clenching into a fist at my side. "We have nothing to talk about." "Danny, come on," he said, his voice slipping into that familiar, patronizing tone. "Enough is enough. You've made your point. Now it's time to come back to your family." I almost laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that scraped against my throat. "Family," I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "You mean the family that left me out of their vacation? The family that laughed about how I wouldn't fit in while boarding first class. Silence. I could almost hear him grinding his teeth, struggling to find the right words, the right tone, the right combination of guilt and manipulation to pull me back into their orbit. "That's not what this is about," he said finally, his voice sharp defensive. "You're being ridiculous." "No," I said, my voice cold final. "I'm just finally standing up for myself." He hesitated, the silence stretching between us, thick and suffocating like the heavy air before a storm. "Daniel," he said finally, his voice dropping into a low, dangerous tone, "you're making a mistake. You're going to regret this." I felt a strange, bitter satisfaction swell in my chest, a quiet, simmering rage that burned away the last traces of guilt and doubt. "No," I said, my voice steady, unshakable. "The only mistake I made was letting you use me for so long." More silence. I could almost hear him struggling the carefully constructed facade of a loving, supportive father cracking under the weight of his own hypocrisy. "You'll come crawling back," he said finally, his voice tight strained like he was clinging to the last threads of his pride. "You'll see. You'll need us." I felt a sharp, bitter laugh slip past my lips, my chest swelling with a strange, unfamiliar sense of power. "No," I said, my voice calm, steady. "I won't." I hung up before he could respond, my heart racing, my mind buzzing with 1,000 conflicting emotions. For the first time in years I had stood my ground. I had drawn a line and refused to let them cross it. And for the first time in my life I felt free. In the weeks that followed, the silence stretched on long and unbroken. I didn't hear from my parents again, didn't see my sister's name light up on my phone, didn't get any more desperate messages from long-forgotten family friends. And I liked it that way. I took another trip this time to Japan, wandering through cherry blossom gardens, exploring ancient temples, and finally finding the peace I had spent years chasing. And when I came back, I made a decision. I blocked their numbers, deleted their messages, and removed them from my social media. I had spent too many years being their crutch, their safety net, their silent, forgotten son. But not anymore. From now on, I was living for myself. And it felt incredible. Story 2, I came back from a work trip expecting comfort, but found chaos instead. My name's Alex, I'm 29, and I work as a civil engineer. My job is demanding long hours on site, constantly travelling between projects. My house was my refuge, my place to unwind and reset, or at least it used to be. After 3 weeks away, all I wanted was to crash on my couch and zone out. But as I turned onto my street, I froze. There it was, a bold red sold sign planted firmly in my front yard. I slammed the brakes tires screeching against the pavement. My brain just couldn't compute it. No way. My house sold. I yanked the keys out, leaving my suitcase in the car, and hurried to the door. Before I could even process what was happening, I heard him. Logan, my stepfather. Inside packing boxes like it was just another Tuesday. Logan, I stormed in, voice trembling with a mix of exhaustion and fury. He didn't even flinch, just looked up casually from sealing a box. "Oh, hey kiddo, back already?" Kiddo, like I was some clueless teenager again. My patience snapped. What the hell is going on? Why is there a sold sign on my lawn? Logan sighed like I was the one inconveniencing him. "We sold it. Your mum and I. You don't need a big house like this. You're young, still figuring things out. A small apartment would suit you better." My jaw tightened. "Logan, this is my house. I bought it with my money." He chuckled, patting my shoulder like I was being naive. "You didn't do it alone, kiddo. Your mum and I helped out, remember, shared assets. You don't actually own anything." My stomach sank. It wasn't true. It couldn't be. I knew I'd bought the house myself with my hard-earned savings. But Logan's words echoed back to a time when I was 24, just starting my career. My credit was decent, but the bank required a co-signer. Mum offered to help, saying it was just paperwork. Logan must have found a way to manipulate that. Heart pounding, I scrambled to my office and dug through the drawer where I kept my house documents. There it was, the refinancing paperwork. Logan had used Mum's credit to refinance behind my back. My name had quietly vanished from the deed months ago. Legally, it was now his house. You forged my name, my voice cracked. Logan shrugged, completely unfazed. You didn't read the fine print. You were too eager to get your fancy house. Lesson learned, kiddo. Anger boiled in my veins. Where's Mom? He didn't even look up. Already on her way to Greece. Needed some R&R. I'm catching a flight in a few hours myself. 5-star hotels, private tours, the works. First class, of course. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They sold my house, pocketed the money, and just took off, leaving me with nothing. Logan zipped up his sleek leather suitcase, throwing me a smirk on his way out. You'll thank us one day, he tossed over his shoulder. Then he was gone, strutting out like he'd just done me a favour. I was left standing in the empty shell of my home, surrounded by scattered boxes and shattered dreams. But I wasn't going to just sit back and let him get away with it. Logan thought he'd won. He thought I'd just roll over and accept it. He didn't know me at all. I wasn't a kid anymore. I wasn't helpless. Taking a deep breath, I pulled out my phone. First call my lawyer Lily. Second, my uncle Jake, a financial analyst who always had my back. I wasn't sure how, but I was going to make Logan pay. As I stood in my half-empty living room, I felt a surge of determination. Logan could sip his overpriced champagne now. Let him enjoy his little vacation. Because when he came back, he'd realize one thing: he wasn't the only one who could play dirty. I leaned against the wall, staring at the scattered boxes that once held my life. The echoes of Logan's smug voice still clung to the air, taunting me. He really thought I'd just accept this, let them strip me of my home, my sanctuary, and walk away without a fight. Not a chance. I punched in my lawyer's number. Lily and I had gone to college together. She wasn't just my attorney, but a close friend who knew how much this house meant to me. She picked up on the second ring. Alex, you back from your trip? Yeah, I said, my voice tight, but I came home to a sold sign on my lawn. We need to talk. She paused. Wait, what? I explained everything: the forged documents, the stolen house, Logan's smug departure for Europe. I could almost hear her mind racing on the other end. That's okay. First deep breath. I need you to send me every piece of paperwork you have on the house. Contracts, mortgage papers, anything. I've got it all, I said already, pulling files from my drawer, but I checked the deed. My name's gone. He refinanced behind my back. Lily's tone sharpened. That's a different kind of fraud. If he did that without your consent, we have a case. But I need to see those documents to confirm. I emailed her the files within minutes, my hands still trembling. I wasn't just angry, I was livid, but I knew I needed to stay smart, stay focused. Rage could cloud my judgment, and I couldn't afford that. Not now. Next, I called Uncle Jake. If anyone could dig into Logan's finances and find a weak spot, it was him. Jake had never liked Logan. He'd warned my mum about him from the start, but she'd brushed it off, convinced Logan was just a charming, misunderstood soul. Hey Jake, it's Alex. Hey kid, how was the trip? I gritted my teeth. Not great. I came back to find my house sold out from under me. Jake went silent for a moment. What the hell are you talking about? I explained the situation, my pulse pounding as I paced the empty living room. He refinanced without telling you, took your name off the deed. Exactly. Jake let out a slow, angry breath. All right, send me his financial info if you have it. I'm going to dig through his records. If he's been this bold, I guarantee he's made other mistakes. Let's find them. For the next few days, I threw myself into collecting every piece of evidence I could find. Old emails, text threads, bank statements, anything that might hint at Logan's shady financial moves. I barely slept, my mind racing with a mix of anxiety and determination. I refused to let him win. A week later, Lily called me back. I could hear the barely contained excitement in her voice. Alex, we've got him. I sat up straight, the exhaustion of the past few days momentarily forgotten. What did you find? Your signature on the refinancing papers, it's a fake. Sloppy too. The pen pressure is inconsistent and the style doesn't match any of your previous documents. We can prove you didn't sign it. My heart raced. That's enough to go after him. Oh, it's more than enough. We're talking felony-level fraud here. He didn't just steal your house, he falsified legal documents to do it. We can freeze his assets, take him to court, the whole 9 yards. I felt a surge of cold satisfaction. Logan had played his game, but he'd left too many loose threads. Now it was my turn to pull them. But I wasn't done yet. I called Jake, my resolve hardening. "Jake, you find anything on Logan's finances?" He laughed a low, satisfied sound. "Oh, you have no idea. Turns out Logan's been funneling money out of your mum's joint accounts into a private offshore fund. He's been bleeding her dry while she's been sipping cocktails in Greece." My blood went cold. She has no idea, does she? Doubt it. I'm guessing she thinks their little European tour is being funded by shared assets or whatever garbage he sold her. My jaw tightened. All right, I want everything. Every account, every transfer. I want to hit him where it hurts. "Already on it, kid," Jake said. "Logan's about to have a very rude awakening." I hung up my mind, spinning. Logan thought he'd pulled the ultimate power move, but he'd forgotten one crucial thing. I wasn't the same naive kid who'd needed a cosigner years ago. I was smarter now, sharper, and I had nothing left to lose. Let him enjoy his 5-star hotels and first-class flights, because when he came back he'd find his entire life unravelled, his accounts frozen, his secrets exposed. I was just getting started. For the next week, I felt like a ghost in my own life. My house, the one I'd poured my savings into, felt like a hollow shell. Every corner whispered Logan's betrayal. Every empty room echoed with his arrogant, dismissive tone. But I wasn't the kind to crumble. I was raised to stand my ground, and this time I was going to hit back hard. Lily and I met at her office, her desk buried under stacks of documents and highlighted notes. She had that fierce, focused look she got right before a big case. "All right," she said, tapping the stack of papers in front of her. "We've got him on the forged signature. That's our strongest angle. But I've been digging deeper." I leaned in my pulse, picking up. "What did you find?" She smirked, leaning back in her chair. "Logan's been running a lot more than just a con on your house. He's been using your mother's accounts to cover some shady business deals. Offshore transfers, unreported income, the kind of stuff that gets the IRS very interested." I let out a slow breath. Perfect. "We're not just going after your house anymore, Alex. We're going to unravel his entire financial life." I couldn't help the grin that spread across my face. Let's ruin him. The next few days blurred into a frenzy of phone calls, document scans and strategy meetings. Jake pulled through on his end, uncovering a mess of tax evasion and hidden accounts Logan had been trying to keep off the books. I couldn't believe how recklessly he'd operated, as if he thought he was untouchable. Meanwhile, I prepared for a confrontation with my mum. She still hadn't returned my calls, but I knew she'd have to face me eventually. I was done being the naive son who quietly cleaned up the messes others left behind. Finally, the moment came. My mum called, her voice bright and breezy, as if she hadn't just helped sell my house out from under me. "Alex, oh, it's so nice to hear your voice, sweetheart. How's everything?" I clenched my jaw. "Not great, actually. You and Logan sold my house while I was away." Silence, then a nervous chuckle. "Oh, honey, I thought you'd understand. You don't need a house that big. Logan and I talked about it, and we agreed this is what's best for you." I could practically feel my blood boiling. Best for me. You sold my house without telling me, pocketed the money and disappeared to Europe. You think that's what's best for me? She sighed, her tone turning defensive. "Alex, you're young. You have your whole life ahead of you. Logan and I just thought this would help you focus on your career without the burden of a mortgage." I closed my eyes, fighting the urge to scream. "Mom, this wasn't about helping me. This was about helping yourselves. And I'm done being taken advantage of." "Alex, don't be dramatic," she said, her voice tightening. "We'll talk about this when we get back." I took a deep breath, forcing my tone to stay calm. "No, we won't, because by the time you get back, Logan's life will be in ruins. I hope you enjoy the rest of your vacation, Mom." I hung up before she could respond, my heart racing. For the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of control. A few days later, Jake called me, his voice alive with energy. "Alex, it's happening." "What's happening?" I said, my pulse picking up. Logan's accounts are frozen. I pulled a few strings, had some old friends at the IRS take a closer look at his records. Turns out he's been dodging taxes for years. Offshore accounts, shell companies, you name it. They're going after him hard. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. You're serious? Oh, I'm dead serious. He's about to get hit with a full audit and they've frozen every account with his name on it. He won't be able to buy a cup of coffee, let alone fund his European escapades. I hung up and let the news sink in. This was it, the first real blow in my revenge. But I wasn't done yet. I had one more piece to set in motion. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number of a private investigator I'd worked with on a few construction fraud cases. If Logan thought his dirty dealings were confined to a few shady bank accounts, he had another thing coming. The investigator picked up his gravelly voice, a welcome sound. Alex, long time. What can I do for you? I took a deep breath. I need you to dig into someone for me. Logan Mitchell. I want everything affairs, business deals, offshore accounts, you name it. He let out a low whistle. Sounds like you've got a score to settle. You have no idea. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair, letting the tension in my shoulders slowly drain away. Logan's life was unravelling thread by thread, and he had no idea. Let him sip his overpriced wine. Let him stroll through the cobbled streets of Rome thinking he'd won. Because when he came back, he'd find his world crumbling beneath him. I wasn't just taking back my house, I was taking back my power. I spent the next week in a blur of calculated chaos, lining up every piece for the final strike. Logan had set this game in motion, but he'd underestimated me. I wasn't the same struggling kid he could manipulate. I had resources, connections, and most importantly, the burning drive to take back what was mine. A few days before Logan's return, my investigator Tom called. I picked up on the first ring. Alex, you're going to love this, he said, a grin practically audible through the phone. Hit me. Logan's been cheating on your mom. I froze. I'd expected to find financial scams, maybe even a shady business partner or two, but this, it hit deeper than I'd expected. Are you sure? Oh, I'm sure. I've got photos, texts, even a few recordings. He's been whining and dining some younger woman on the same accounts he used to rob you blind. I closed my eyes, feeling the anger surge through me. Not only had he stolen my home, but he was using my mother's money to bankroll his affair. It made me sick, but it also gave me an idea. Send me everything you have, I said, gripping the phone tightly. And keep digging. I want every dirty little secret he's tried to bury. Tom chuckled. Already on it. This guy's been living a double life for years. It's all about to come crashing down. I hung up, my mind racing. I wasn't just going to take Logan down financially. I was going to rip apart the carefully constructed facade he'd built, exposing him for the lying, manipulative fraud he truly was. The day before Logan's flight landed, I made my final move. I called my mom, my tone as cold as the anger simmering in my veins. Mom, you need to come home, now. She sounded annoyed, like I'd interrupted a spa day. Alex, what's this about? Can't it wait until we're back? No, I said, my voice steely. It can't. The silence on the line stretched, and then she sighed. Fine. I'll see if we can change our flight. I hung up, my jaw tight. This was it, the final act. The next day, I sat in my car across the street from my old house, the one Logan had stolen. I watched as the black SUV pulled up, Logan's smug face appearing as he stepped out. He looked tan-rested and entirely too pleased with himself. He dragged his suitcase up the driveway, humming to himself. When he reached the front door, he punched in the code. Nothing happened. His brow furrowed. He tried again. Still nothing. Then the door swung open and my mother appeared, her face a mask of barely contained fury. Linda, what's going on? Logan stammered, clearly caught off guard. She crossed her arms, blocking the doorway. We need to talk. Logan tried to push past her, but she held her ground. Not out here, Linda. Just let me in. No, she said, her voice trembling with barely restrained anger. Not until you explain this. She held up a stack of papers, the bank statements, the offshore transfers, the affair photos. I'd made sure she got them the night before, along with a note. You deserve to know the truth. I watched as Logan's face turned pale, his confident smirk crumbling into a mask of panic. He reached for her arm, but she stepped back, her voice rising. "You've been lying to me, stealing from me, cheating on me. How could you, after everything I've given you?" Logan's eyes darted around as if hoping to find an escape, but there was none. I had cornered him, stripped him of his defences. "Linda, please, it's not what you think." "Not what I think." She threw the papers at him, the pages fluttering around his feet like fallen leaves. "You stole my son's house, drained my accounts, and funded your affair with our money. You lied to me." Logan's hands trembled. He took a step back, his face ashen. "Linda, I can explain." "No," she cut him off, her voice breaking. "You're a liar, a thief, and I want you out of my life, out of my house, out of everything." Logan's shoulders slumped. He looked like a man whose world had just imploded, which in a way it had. My mum slammed the door in his face, the sound echoing down the quiet suburban street. I leaned back in my car seat, a slow, satisfied smile spreading across my face. But I wasn't quite done. I waited until Logan stumbled to his car, fumbling with his keys, his hands shaking. I pulled out my phone and dialed one last number. 911, what's your emergency? I kept my tone calm. "Yes, I'd like to report a trespasser. He's been harassing my mother and I believe he might be dangerous. His name is Logan Mitchell. He's outside my mother's house right now." I hung up watching as Logan's car screeched out of the driveway, tyres smoking as he sped down the street. As I pulled away, my phone buzzed. A text from Jake. Jake heard Logan's accounts just got permanently frozen. The IRS hit him with a massive tax evasion charge. He's done. I let out a long breath, the tension finally draining from my shoulders. It was over. Logan had lost everything, his money, his reputation, his freedom. As I drove back to my new apartment, the one I'd been quietly buying while Logan was busy playing European royalty, I felt a strange sense of peace. I hadn't just taken back my house, I'd taken back my power, my sense of control, my dignity. I parked, stepping out into the cool evening air. For the first time in a long while I felt free. And Logan, he was just another ghost in the past, a cautionary tale about greed and betrayal. As I walked up to my door, I smiled. I had won. Story 3. My dad sold my car while I was at work. When he came back from his luxury resort trip, he looked more relaxed than ever while I was left stranded. I didn't argue, didn't yell, just stood there trying to process how I was supposed to get to work now. I never thought I'd be one of those guys ranting on the internet, but here I am hoping putting this into words will keep me from losing it. I'm 26 and work in a warehouse. The kind of guy who keeps his head down, clocks in and out, and minds his own business. My life isn't fancy a small apartment, a used but reliable car, and a fridge mostly filled with leftover takeout. But it's mine. I've always made sure to cover my own bills and stay out of debt. My parents, different story. They're not broke, just really good at pretending when it suits them. Growing up, I'd hear we can't afford this right now when I needed new school supplies, only to watch them splurge on a steak dinner that same night. Whenever I asked for something reasonable, I was made to feel like I was asking for the world. I should have known better than to think they'd change. Last Monday, I got off my shift, dead tired but looking forward to just driving home. I stepped out into the parking lot, reaching for my keys, but the familiar sight of my black Honda Civic was gone. I stopped confused. Maybe I'd parked on the other side of the lot. I circled twice, trying to remember. No luck. My brain was fried from the long shift, and I started to panic. I called the cops, pacing the empty lot. It wasn't until the officer checked the records that I found out the truth. "Your car wasn't stolen, sir," he said. "It was sold by the registered owner." My stomach twisted. That can't be right. The car is mine. I paid for it myself. He paused. The title lists a Daniel Carter as the owner. And that's when it hit me. My dad's name was on the title. I needed a co-signer when I bought it 6 years ago, but I paid it off long ago. I just never got around to updating the paperwork. Stupid mistake. One I didn't think would come back to bite me. My mind raced. I remembered leaving my car at their place the night before because my apartment building was repaving the parking lot. I figured it'd be safe there. I should have known better. My co-worker gave me a ride home while I sat in stunned silence. When I got back to my parents' house, the place was quiet. I called both their phones straight to voicemail. Then out of habit, I checked Facebook. There they were, sunbathing at some luxury resort, sipping bright cocktails, all smiles. My dad had his arm around my mum, looking like they didn't have a care in the world. One of the captions read, "Much needed escape. You only live once." When they finally came back a week later, my dad didn't even look at me as he set his suitcase down. His tan was deeper, his shirt crisp and new. "We needed the money more than you needed a car," he said, like it was no big deal. "It was just sitting there, Alex. You'll figure something out." My fists clenched, knuckles turning white. I could barely find my voice. "You sold my car." "It was just sitting there," he repeated like I was being unreasonable. My mum chimed in, setting down her designer handbag. "It was a last-minute deal at the resort. All-inclusive, once in a lifetime." I almost laughed. "Oh well, as long as you had a good time." "Don't be dramatic." My dad sighed, tossing his wallet onto the counter. "Take the bus for a while. It won't kill you." I couldn't help the bitterness in my voice. "You sold my only way to get to work. I needed that car for deliveries. I get extra pay for that." My dad just waved it off. "You're always dropping by here anyway. It's like you never moved out." That was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. "I moved out 3 years ago. You just keep using my name for utilities and forwarding my mail here because it's easier for you." Silence. My mum glanced at my dad, then back at me like they just remembered I wasn't their live-in help anymore. "You didn't even call me," I whispered. "You just sold it, like it didn't matter." "It's just a car," my dad muttered, already bored with the conversation. "You'll get another one." Something in me snapped. I didn't yell or argue. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, I'll figure something out." But I was done. Done being their safety net. Done being the one they could screw over because they knew I wouldn't make a fuss. They made one thing clear that night. My needs never mattered as long as theirs were met. The next morning I drove to their house to confront them. My dad looked annoyed the moment I walked in. "Oh, look who's still sulking," he smirked. I crossed my arms. "We need to talk." He leaned against the counter, still tanned from his little getaway. "Are you really going to act like losing a car is the end of the world? That car helped me get to work. It's how I made money. But I guess you needed it more than I did, huh?" My dad rolled his eyes. "We deserved that vacation." "You act like we never do anything for you." I couldn't help it. I laughed. "You mean like selling my car behind my back? We're family," he said, as if that made everything okay. Families help each other out. That's when I realized it wasn't just about the car. It was about years of being used. Years of being the backup plan. Years of watching them make selfish choices and justify them with the word family. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stay calm. "I'm done being your safety net. I'm done being the one you take from when you need something. I'm done." He just stared at me like I was speaking another language. "Oh, stop being so dramatic. Figure it out yourselves," I said, turning to leave. "I'm not giving you another cent." I walked out, not sure what would happen next. But one thing was clear. Their days of using me were over. I didn't have to wait long for the fallout. The very next morning my phone lit up with a call from my mum. I ignored it. Then came the texts. "Alex, we need to talk. You can't just cut us off like this. We're your parents." I left them on read. By noon my dad had joined in. "Stop being immature. Family comes first. You're acting like a child." I deleted each one without replying. By 3 p.m. they switched tactics. My mum's tone grew desperate. Alex, please, your father's upset. We didn't think this would upset you so much. Let's talk. I almost laughed. Upset. They had blindsided me, stripped me of my independence, and expected me to smile and shrug it off. That evening, I got another call, this time from my uncle Roger. Now, Roger isn't exactly a neutral party. He's my dad's older brother, the successful one, who always bails them out when their spending habits catch up with them. The guy who lent my parents money for their last few vacations. I considered letting it go to voicemail, but my curiosity got the better of me. Alex, he began, his tone a mix of annoyance and forced calm. What's going on? Your parents are in a panic. I took a slow breath. Did they tell you why? They said you're overreacting about a car, that you're threatening to cut them off completely. I felt a spark of anger flare up. Of course they hadn't told him the full story. Did they tell you they sold my car without asking me, that they took the one thing I actually owned so they could blow thousands on a luxury resort? Silence, then a hesitant, I didn't know that. Yeah, I continued, my voice tight, and they didn't just sell it. They sold it without even a text or a call. Just sold it while they were lounging by a pool, sipping cocktails and posting about it online. He let out a low sigh. Look, Alex, I get it. They overstepped, but they're still your parents. I clenched my jaw, leaning against my kitchen counter. That's the problem, Roger. They've always overstepped. This isn't the first time. They've used my name for utilities, forwarded my mail without permission, and guilt-tripped me into paying their bills more times than I can count. I'm done. He paused, the line quiet, except for his slow breathing. You can't just walk away from family. I let out a short, humourless laugh. They walked away from me the moment they sold my car without a second thought. They crossed a line, and I'm done pretending like I owe them for existing. Roger sighed again, this time heavier, like he was carrying the weight of our entire family's dysfunction. Just think about it, okay? Don't do something you can't take back. I ended the call without another word. That night I sat in my apartment staring at my bank records. Every single payment for that car had come from my account. I had receipts, transaction histories, and a clear paper trail that proved the car was mine, despite the title being in my dad's name. I had options. The next morning, I started looking into my legal rights. If I could prove I had been the sole financial contributor to the car, I might have a case. I wasn't just going to let them walk all over me. I spent hours poring over articles, forums, and legal advice pages. The more I read, the angrier I got. They hadn't just stolen my car, they'd stolen my freedom, my mobility, and my ability to earn extra cash from deliveries. Around noon, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my mom. I let it ring, then checked the voicemail she left. Alex, this is getting ridiculous. We're your parents. We've always been there for you. We've made sacrifices. You need to stop this nonsense before you regret it. I deleted it. An hour later, my dad texted. If you do this, you'll regret it. You don't want to make an enemy of your family. Enemy. The word hung in the air, bitter and sharp. That's when I made up my mind. They wanted to turn this into a standoff. Fine. I could play that game. The following day, I took the morning off work and headed to a local law firm. I explained my situation to a tired-looking lawyer named Mr. Lawson. He barely raised an eyebrow as I detailed how my parents had sold my car without my consent, pocketed the cash, and then had the audacity to try and guilt-trip me for being angry about it. He flipped through my stack of printed bank statements, his eyes scanning the dates and amounts. You've got a strong case, he said, finally setting the papers down. You made all the payments, you have the receipts, and their names are only on the title as co-signers. If you decide to take this to court, you'll likely win. Hearing that felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't being unreasonable. I had every right to be angry. I shook his hand, thanked him for his time, and walked out of his office feeling a strange mix of relief and fury. I wasn't going to let them steamroll me again. On the way home, my phone buzzed. Another text from my dad. We need to talk. This is getting out of hand. I didn't reply. That evening, as I sat in my apartment, I realized something. For the first time in years, I wasn't scared of their anger. I wasn't worried about their disappointment or their attempts to guilt me into submission. I felt free, and it felt good. They had taken my car, but they weren't going to take my peace of mind, not anymore. I had a plan, and this time I wasn't going to back down. I knew the storm was coming. My parents had never been the type to let things go, especially when money was involved. They'd taken my car without a second thought, but now that I was pushing back, they were panicking. 2 days after my meeting with Mr. Lawson, I got a knock on my apartment door. It was 7 a.m. I hadn't even had my coffee yet. I opened the door half expecting to find my parents, but instead it was Uncle Roger, dressed in a crisp suit, his leather briefcase in hand. I leaned against the doorframe, raising an eyebrow. "They send you to smooth this over." He sighed, looking more tired than I'd ever seen him. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside, waving him in. He set his briefcase down on my tiny kitchen table, straightening his cuffs like we were about to negotiate a business merger. "Your parents are a mess, Alex," he said, dropping into one of my mismatched chairs. "They're saying you've cut them off, that you're threatening to take them to court." I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter. "They stole from me, Roger. What did they expect?" He rubbed his temples. "Look, I'm not here to defend what they did. It was a crappy move, no doubt. But suing your parents, that's a line you can't uncross." I let out a slow breath, my jaw tight. "They sold my car without my consent. I've got every right to take them to court." Roger leaned back, his eyes narrowing slightly. "And what exactly do you hope to get out of this? Money, an apology, revenge?" I met his stare unflinching. "I want my money back, the money I worked for, the money they stole to fund their vacation." He shook his head, letting out a deep sigh. "Alex, they don't have that kind of money. They spent it. You're not going to get it back." I felt a bitter laugh bubbling up. Of course they'd already burned through it. It wasn't enough to just steal from me. They had to blow it all on overpriced cocktails and poolside massages. So what I snapped, I'm just supposed to roll over and let them get away with it. Again. Roger leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "I'm not saying that, but maybe there's another way, something that doesn't involve dragging this into a courtroom." I crossed my arms tighter, the muscles in my shoulders tensing. "And what would that be, Roger?" "They've been using me for years. Selling my car was just the latest in a long line of betrayals." He looked at me, his jaw tightening. "I can cover half of what they owe you. I'll talk to them, make them come up with the rest. But you have to drop this lawsuit idea." I blinked, momentarily caught off guard. I hadn't expected that. Uncle Roger wasn't exactly the type to throw money around, even when it came to family. "You'd do that?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. He hesitated, his eyes darting away for a moment. "Look, your dad is my brother, for better or worse. I can't just stand by and watch this family tear itself apart." I felt a pang of conflicting emotions. Part of me appreciated the gesture. The other part, the angrier, more wounded part, felt like this was just another way to sweep their behaviour under the rug. "What's the catch?" I asked, my tone flat. Roger ran a hand through his thinning hair, looking more like a stressed-out accountant than the successful businessman my parents always bragged about. "No catch. I just don't want this to turn into a full-blown family feud. It's bad for everyone." I clenched my jaw, my mind racing. Could I trust him? Would they actually pay up? Or was this just another way to get me to back down? "I'll think about it," I said, my voice colder than I intended. Roger let out a slow breath, like he'd been holding it the entire conversation. He pushed back his chair, standing up and grabbing his briefcase. "Just don't make any hasty decisions. Okay, family is complicated." I walked him to the door, my mind still spinning. As I closed it behind him, I felt a strange sense of clarity. For the first time in years, I felt like I had the upper hand. I sat back down at my table, my mind racing through the options. Maybe taking them to court wasn't the only path to justice, but I wasn't about to let them off the hook that easily. If they wanted to avoid a courtroom showdown, they were going to have to do a hell of a lot better than a half-hearted payout and a few guilt-ridden phone calls. The next morning I woke up to a barrage of texts from my parents. My mum had shifted from pleading to passive-aggressive. "We're your family, Alex. You don't just cut off family. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You're being unfair. We're your parents." I scrolled through the messages, feeling my anger simmering just beneath the surface. They still didn't get it. They still thought this was about a single car. They had no idea that this was about years of being used, dismissed, and taken for granted. I tossed my phone onto the couch, my mind racing. Maybe Roger was right. Maybe a courtroom battle would just make things worse. Maybe I needed a different kind of justice. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time it was my dad. I hesitated, then picked up. "What do you want?" I said, my tone sharp. He let out a huff, like this whole thing was a minor inconvenience. "Can you come over? We need to talk." I considered blowing him off, but a small, spiteful part of me wanted to see the look on his face when I told him exactly where he stood. "Fine," I said, grabbing my keys. "I'll be there in 20. I pulled up to their house, the place looking as immaculate as ever, the lawn perfectly manicured, the porch spotless. I stepped inside without knocking. They were waiting for me in the living room, my mum clutching a tissue like she was about to play the victim in a soap opera. "Alex," my dad began, standing with his arms crossed his face, a tight mask of frustration. "This has gone on long enough. We're your parents. We deserve better than this." I let out a short, bitter laugh. "You're right. You do deserve better, but so do I." He bristled, his jaw tightening. "We've done so much for you. You act like we've been some kind of burden." I stepped closer, meeting his glare. "You sold my car, Dad. My only way to get to work. You didn't even call me. You just sold it like it was your right." My mum's eyes filled with tears, her lips trembling. "We needed that money, Alex. It was a last-minute deal." I shook my head, my voice rising. "And you didn't think to ask me. You didn't think to even let me know. You just took it because it was convenient for you." My dad's face flushed, his jaw tightening further. "We're family. We do things for each other." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "I've done things for you my whole life. Paid your bills, fixed your messes, let you use my name for utilities, and this is how you repay me." Silence. My mum looked down, her tears drying up her face, pale. My dad's fists clenched, his jaw set in a hard line. I turned to leave my hand already on the doorknob. "Figure it out yourselves. I'm done." I slammed the door behind me, my heart pounding, my breath coming in sharp, angry bursts. I was done playing the dutiful son, done being their backup plan. This was just the beginning. I expected the fallout. I just didn't expect it to hit so fast. 2 days after I walked out of my parents' house, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Calls, texts, voicemails, my parents, my uncle, even a few distant cousins I hadn't heard from in years. It was like the entire family had been mobilized to guilt-trip me back into submission. I ignored most of it, but one voicemail from my dad caught my attention. "You want to play hardball, Alex, fine, but don't come crying to us when this all blows up in your face." I leaned back on my couch, gripping my phone tighter than necessary. It was almost funny. They were still trying to bully me into backing down, still trying to play the same tired cards they'd always used, guilt, anger, manipulation. But this time I wasn't biting. That night my phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from Uncle Roger. "I tried, Alex. I offered to cover half of what they owe you, but they're refusing to budge. They still don't think they did anything wrong. Be careful. They're talking about teaching you a lesson." I felt a chill run down my spine. That was the thing about my parents. They never just let things go. They doubled down, convinced they were always in the right. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding on my apartment door. I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, and yanked it open. My parents shoved past me, their faces twisted in anger. "What the hell is this?" my dad barked, tossing a stack of papers onto my kitchen counter. I blinked, still trying to catch up. I picked up the papers, my eyes skimming the bold black letters at the top, "Demand for payment." My stomach dropped. They'd sent me a bill. For what I managed to choke out, my pulse pounding in my ears. "For everything we've done for you," my dad spat, his face turning red. "All the money we spent raising you, all the groceries, all the rent you supposedly helped with. You think we owe you. You've been a financial burden for years. I felt my hands start to shake. I flipped through the pages, my eyes catching on the ridiculous list of expenses: baby clothes, school supplies, family vacations from over a decade ago. They had itemized my childhood like I was some kind of bad investment they were trying to recoup losses on. This is a joke, right? I stammered, looking up at them, my heart hammering in my chest. My mum crossed her arms, her jaw tight. You think you're the only one who's made sacrifices, Alex. You think you've done us some great favour by being our son. We've been supporting you for years. It's time you paid us back. I felt something in me snap, a white-hot anger surging up from my gut. I dropped the stack of papers onto the counter, the pages fanning out like some absurd, overpriced receipt. You're insane, I managed to spit out, my voice shaking. You sold my car. You took my only way to get to work, and now you're trying to bill me for being your kid. My dad stepped closer, his face inches from mine. We've given you everything. You owe us. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. I don't owe you a damn thing. I paid for that car. I paid for my own groceries. I've covered your bills, your utilities, your mistakes for years. You're the ones who owe me. My mum's eyes filled with tears, her lower lip trembling. Why are you doing this to us, Alex? We're your parents. I took a step back, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might crack my ribs. No, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. You're not parents. You're parasites. My dad's jaw dropped, his face turning an alarming shade of red. My mom let out a strangled sob, clutching at her chest like I'd just physically struck her. Get out, I said, pointing at the door, my hand shaking. Get out of my apartment. They hesitated for a moment, my dad's fists clenching and unclenching like he was trying to decide whether or not to hit me. Finally, he grabbed my mum's arm and yanked her toward the door. You're going to regret this, Alex? He spat, his voice shaking with barely contained rage. You're going to end up alone. I slammed the door behind them, my entire body trembling. I leaned against the cool metal, sucking in deep, ragged breaths, my mind racing. They'd just declared war. The next day, I made a call to Mr. Lawson, my lawyer. I faxed him the ridiculous stack of bills they'd tried to hit me with. He called me back within the hour, his voice low and serious. Alex, this changes things. If they're trying to claim, you owe them money that opens the door for a counterclaim. You can not only demand the value of the car, but also compensation for financial abuse and emotional distress. I felt a dark, bitter satisfaction twist in my gut. They'd tried to turn the tables, but they'd just handed me exactly what I needed to crush them. I spent the next few days pulling together every scrap of evidence I had, bank statements, emails, text messages, even old Facebook posts, showing them flaunting the lifestyle they'd funded by siphoning money out of my pockets. I wasn't just going to get my money back, I was going to bury them. 2 weeks later, I served them with the paperwork. It felt surreal, handing over the thick stack of legal documents to the process server, knowing it would hit them like a freight train. The calls started again, this time more desperate. My mum's voicemails grew more frantic, her tone shifting from anger to despair. My dad's messages, once filled with threats and bluster, became quieter, almost pleading. But I didn't respond. Then one morning I got a call from Uncle Roger. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in my gut told me to pick up. They're losing the house, Alex, he said, his voice heavy with a mix of frustration and resignation. They overextended themselves, took out a second mortgage. They can't pay it back. I felt a strange sense of calm settle over me. This was their mess. They had made their choices, burned every bridge, and now the flames were licking at their feet. I'm sorry, Roger, I said, my voice steady, but this is their own doing. He sighed, the line crackling with his frustration. You're really not going to help them, are you? I closed my eyes, taking a slow, deep breath. No, I'm done saving them from themselves. And for the first time in my life, I felt free.